I dropped my 6-month-old daughter at daycare like any other Tuesday morning in March. The sun was shining, Maya was babbling happily in her car seat, and I remember thinking how lucky I was to finally have our routine down after months of adjusting to single motherhood. I kissed her chubby cheeks, handed her over to what I thought was her caregiver, and drove to work feeling proud and accomplished. 30 minutes later, my phone rang while I was setting up paint easels for my second-grade art class. The voice on the other end said words that still make my blood run cold. "Ma'am, we have no record of your child ever being enrolled here. Are you sure you have the right daycare?" "My name is Jessica Chen. I'm 28 years old and I teach elementary school art here in Denver. 6 months ago, I became a single mother when my marriage fell apart, and Maya became my entire world. She's this perfect little human with the biggest brown eyes and the sweetest giggle, and she has this tiny strawberry birthmark on her left shoulder that looks like a little heart." When I got that phone call, my hands started shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I raced back to the daycare, my heart pounding in my chest, telling myself there had to be some mistake. But when I arrived, everything looked different. The building was the same, but the sign read, "Sunshine Learning Center," instead of the Sunshine Daycare I remembered. I ran inside, demanding to know where my baby was, and the director looked at me like I was completely insane. She pulled up their computer system, searched every database, and told me what I couldn't accept. Maya Chen had never been enrolled there. According to their records, I had never even visited their facility. That's when the real panic set in. I started searching frantically around the building, calling Maya's name even though I knew a 6-month-old couldn't answer. And that's when I found it. Tucked behind some bushes near a similar-looking building 3 blocks away, Maya's floral diaper bag that my mother had given us. The bag was there, but Maya wasn't. I called the police immediately. Officer Bradley arrived within minutes, and I'll never forget how he looked at me with such concern when I described my daughter. 6 months old, black hair, brown eyes, wearing a yellow onesie with tiny elephants, and she has a small birthmark on her left shoulder, shaped like a heart. The next few hours were a blur of police interviews, security footage, and growing desperation. No one had seen us. No one remembered Maya. It was like we had never existed. I called my mother in California, sobbing into the phone, "Mom, I can't find Maya. I dropped her off this morning, and now she's just gone." 3 days passed with no leads, no answers, and no Maya. I barely slept, barely ate, and spent every waking moment wondering if I was losing my mind or if something terrible had happened to my baby. My brother David drove up from Colorado Springs to help with the search, and my mother flew in immediately. But nothing anyone did could fill the Maya-shaped hole in my chest. Then, on Thursday afternoon, while I was sitting in the police station going over my statement for the 100th time, something happened that changed everything. A woman walked through those glass doors and she was carrying a baby. Not just any baby, but a baby that looked exactly like Maya, down to the yellow elephant onesie and the tiny birthmark on her shoulder. The woman's name was Sarah Mitchell. She was 31 years old, and she looked just as frantic and desperate as I felt. She walked straight up to me, tears streaming down her face, and said something that made my world tilt completely off its axis. "Excuse me, I think there's been a terrible mistake. This is my daughter, Emma. Someone took her from my home this morning, and I've been looking everywhere for her." I stared at this woman holding what I knew was my daughter, and I felt something inside me break and heal at the same time. "That's my daughter, Maya," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Look at her birthmark, look at her eyes. That's my baby." Sarah's face went white, and she clutched the baby closer to her chest. "This is Emma. I gave birth to her 6 months ago at Denver General Hospital. I have photos, I have hospital records. This is my daughter." The police separated us immediately and called for DNA testing. But as I looked at this woman who was holding my child and claiming she was hers, I realized that something much bigger and more complicated was happening here. This wasn't a kidnapping or a mix-up at daycare. This was something that would challenge everything I thought I knew about motherhood, family, and love. The DNA results would take 3 days to come back, and those 3 days would change not just my life, but the lives of 3 families forever. Because sometimes the truth isn't what you expect, And sometimes the most shocking discoveries lead to the most beautiful endings you never saw coming. Let me take you back to the beginning because understanding how I got to that moment requires knowing who I was before my world fell apart. My name is Jessica Chen, and 6 months before that terrible Tuesday, I was a completely different person, living a completely different life. I had been married to Marcus for 3 years, living in a cramped apartment in downtown Denver where the neighbors were too loud and the rent was too high. Marcus worked in sales for a medical equipment company, and I taught art at Jefferson Elementary on the other side of town. We weren't rich, but we were happy, or at least I thought we were. We'd been trying to have a baby for over a year when I finally got pregnant with Maya. The pregnancy was everything I had dreamed it would be. I spent hours painting a mural of butterflies and flowers on the nursery wall, and Marcus would come home from work to find me talking to my growing belly about all the adventures we would have together. We picked out the name Maya because it means illusion in Sanskrit, and she felt like the most beautiful dream come true. Maya was born on a snowy September morning at Denver General Hospital after 12 hours of labor that felt like both an eternity and an instant. When they placed her in my arms, she was perfect. 6 pounds, 2 ounces of pure miracle, with a full head of dark hair and eyes that seemed to look right into my soul. The tiny strawberry birthmark on her left shoulder looked exactly like a little heart, and I kissed it and told her it was proof that she was made of love. But somewhere between Maya's birth and her 3rd month, my marriage started crumbling. Marcus began working longer hours, coming home stressed and distant. He said he was worried about money, about being a good father, about all the responsibility that came with having a family. I tried to be understanding, tried to give him space to adjust, but he kept pulling further and further away. The breaking point came when Maya was 4 months old. I came home from a parent-teacher conference to find Marcus packing his clothes into garbage bags. He couldn't look me in the eye when he said, "I'm not ready for this, Jess." I thought I was, but I can't handle being a father right now. I need some time to figure things out. I begged him to stay, to go to counseling, to at least try to work things out for Maya's sake. But he was already mentally gone, and within a week, he had moved in with his brother across town. The divorce papers arrived 2 weeks later, along with child support documentation that barely covered Maya's daycare expenses. Suddenly, I was a single mother trying to manage everything alone. I had to find a new apartment we could afford on my teacher's salary, which led me to a small 2-bedroom place in a quieter neighborhood called Riverside. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, was a retired nurse with silver hair and kind eyes who immediately took us under her wing. She brought over casseroles during my first week and offered to babysit whenever I needed help. The hardest part wasn't the financial stress or the sleepless nights or even the loneliness. The hardest part was watching Maya's face light up every time someone walked through the door, hoping it might be her daddy. She was too young to understand why he wasn't there anymore, but I could see her looking for him, waiting for him. My mother Rosa called every day from California, offering to fly out and help, but I was determined to prove I could handle motherhood on my own. My sister Carmen sent care packages filled with baby clothes and toys, and my brother David drove up from Colorado Springs every few weekends to help with household repairs and to spend time with his niece. By March, Maya and I had finally found our rhythm. She was sleeping through the night. I had established a morning routine that got us both ready without major meltdowns, and I was starting to feel confident as a single mother. Maya was this bright, happy baby who smiled at everyone and everything. She loved when I sang "You Are My Sunshine" while getting her dressed, and she would kick her little legs and coo along like she was trying to sing with me. Finding the right daycare had been crucial to making everything work. I visited 7 different facilities before settling on what I thought was Sunshine Daycare on Maple Street. The woman who gave me the tour, Mrs. Rodriguez, was warm and experienced, and she held Maya like she was made of precious glass. The facility was clean and bright, with colorful murals on the walls, and the kind of loving atmosphere I wanted for my daughter. I remember thinking, as I drove to work that Tuesday morning after dropping Maya off, that we had finally made it through the hardest part. Maya was thriving. I was managing my responsibilities, and for the first time since Marcus left, I felt proud of what I had accomplished. I was humming along to the radio, planning the art lesson I would teach that day, completely unaware that in 30 minutes, My phone would ring and everything I thought I knew about my life would shatter into a million pieces. At exactly 9:47 a.m., while I was arranging paintbrushes and setting out watercolor palettes for my second grade class, my phone buzzed against the art room table. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but something about the timing made my stomach clench. Maya had only been at daycare for 30 minutes. "Hello, this is Jessica," I answered, balancing the phone between my ear and shoulder while continuing to prepare art supplies. "Ma'am, this is regarding your inquiry about childcare services. I'm calling from Sunshine Daycare, and we seem to have some confusion in our system. We have no record of a Maya Chen being enrolled here, and I wanted to clarify if you might have contacted the wrong facility." The paintbrush I was holding clattered to the floor. "I'm sorry, what did you say? I dropped my daughter off 30 minutes ago. I spoke with Mrs. Rodriguez, the woman who gave me the tour 2 weeks ago." There was a pause on the other end, and I could hear papers rustling. "Ma'am, I'm the director here at Sunshine Daycare. My name is Mrs. Thompson. We don't have anyone named Mrs. Rodriguez on our staff, and according to our enrollment records, we haven't admitted any new children this month. Are you certain you have the correct address?" My hands started trembling so violently I nearly dropped the phone. 1247 Maple Street. That's where I am every morning. That's where I left Maya 30 minutes ago in her yellow elephant onesie. She has a diaper bag with pink flowers on it, and she was wearing the little white socks with lace trim that my sister bought her. "Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but I'm looking at our security footage from this morning, and I don't see anyone matching your description entering our building. Perhaps you're thinking of Sunny Days Childcare on Oak Street or Little Angels on Pine Avenue." The room started spinning around me. My teaching assistant, Ms. Rivera, looked up from the corner where she was organizing construction paper and immediately noticed something was wrong. I waved her over with shaking hands. "No, you don't understand. I toured your facility. I filled out paperwork. I paid the enrollment fee. My daughter Maya is 6 months old. She has dark hair and brown eyes, and she has a small birthmark on her left shoulder that looks like a heart. Please just go check your infant room." Mrs. Thompson's voice became gentler but more concerned. "Ma'am, I've been the director here for 8 years, and I personally handle all new enrollments. I would remember meeting with you. Can you hold on one moment while I double-check with my staff?" Those 60 seconds felt like 60 hours. Ms. Rivera came over and quietly asked if everything was okay, but I couldn't form words to answer her. All I could think about was Maya's sleepy smile when I kissed her goodbye, the way she grabbed onto my finger when I buckled her into the car seat, how she made that little, contented sigh when I handed her to what I thought was her caregiver. Mrs. Thompson came back on the line. "Ma'am, I've spoken with all of our staff members who were working this morning, and no one recalls seeing you or your daughter. I'm very concerned about this situation. Have you contacted the police?" "The police? Why would I contact the police? You have my daughter." My voice was getting louder, and several second graders peeked through the art room window to see what was happening. "Ma'am, I need you to understand that your daughter is not here. She has never been here. If you believe you dropped her off somewhere this morning, and now you can't locate her, this could be a serious situation. Where exactly did you think you brought her?" I grabbed my car keys and purse, motioning for Ms. Rivera to take over the class. "I'm coming there right now. Something is very wrong, and I need to find my baby." The drive back to Maple Street was a blur of panic and disbelief. I kept calling the daycare number, getting the same voicemail message I had heard during my initial visits. "You've reached Sunshine Daycare, where every child shines bright. Please leave a message and we'll return your call promptly." But when I pulled into the parking lot, everything looked different. The building was the same red brick structure with the same white trim, but the sign above the entrance now read, "Sunshine Learning Center, established 2019, instead of the Sunshine Daycare sign I remembered seeing every morning for 2 weeks. I sat in my car for a moment, staring at the building and trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Had I been bringing Maya to the wrong place this entire time? Was I losing my mind? Had the stress of single motherhood finally broken something inside my brain? My phone rang again. It was Mrs. Thompson. "Ma'am, are you the woman sitting in our parking lot right now? Because if you are, I think you need to come inside so we can figure out what's happening here. and I really think you should call the police." I stormed through the glass doors of what I thought was Maya's daycare, with my heart hammering against my ribs. Mrs. Thompson was waiting for me in the lobby, a woman in her 50s with concerned eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. She looked nothing like the Mrs. Rodriguez I remembered meeting during my tour. "You're Jessica Chen," she asked gently, and when I nodded, she gestured toward her office. "Please, let's sit down and try to sort this out." "I don't want to sit down. I want to know where my daughter is. I dropped her off here 30 minutes ago, and now you're telling me she was never here? That makes no sense." My voice was getting higher and shakier with each word. Mrs. Thompson pulled up something on her computer screen and turned the monitor toward me. "This is our security footage from this morning. You can see every person who entered and exited our building between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. Would you like to look through it with me?" I leaned forward, scanning the grainy black and white images. I saw parents dropping off toddlers, staff members arriving for work, a delivery truck pulling up to the side entrance. But I didn't see myself. I didn't see Maya in her car seat or the floral diaper bag or any trace of our morning routine. "This is impossible," I whispered, staring at the screen. I was here. I walked through these doors carrying Maya's car seat. I handed her to Mrs. Rodriguez in the infant room. "Jessica, I need you to listen to me carefully. We don't have an infant room. We're a learning center for children ages 3 to 5. We haven't had babies here in over 6 years. Mrs. Thompson's voice was patient but firm, and we've never had anyone named Mrs. Rodriguez on our staff. The room tilted sideways, and I gripped the edge of her desk to keep from falling. Then, where did I take my baby? Where is Maya? Mrs. Thompson reached for her phone. I think we need to call the police right now. If you believe you dropped your daughter off somewhere this morning and you can't find her, this is an emergency situation. No, wait, let me think. I pressed my palms against my temples, trying to force my panicked brain to work logically. Maybe I went to the wrong building. Maybe I'm confused about the address. I ran back outside to my car, Mrs. Thompson following behind me. I sat in the driver's seat and pulled up the photos on my phone from the day I toured Maya's daycare. There was Maya in her car seat in front of a red brick building. There was the white sign that read Sunshine Daycare. There was Mrs. Rodriguez holding Maya and smiling at the camera. But when I looked up at the building in front of me, the sign clearly said Sunshine Learning Center. Everything else looked identical, the brick color, the white trim, even the landscaping. But it wasn't the same place. Oh my God, I breathed, showing Mrs. Thompson the photo. This isn't where I've been bringing Maya, but it looks exactly the same. Mrs. Thompson studied the image on my phone. Jessica, there are several childcare facilities in this neighborhood with similar names and architecture. It's possible you've been going to a different location that looks like ours. I started the car with shaking hands. I need to find the right building. I need to find where I actually took Maya this morning. I drove up and down every street in a 6-block radius, looking for a building that matched my memory and my photos. My phone kept buzzing with calls from my school, probably wondering where I was. But I couldn't think about anything except finding Maya. 3 blocks east of Maple Street, I found it. A red brick building with white trim that looked almost identical to the learning center. But this one had a faded sign that read, Sunny Days Childcare. The landscaping was overgrown and several windows had brown paper taped over them from the inside. I parked and ran toward the building, calling Maya's name even though I knew she couldn't respond. The front door was locked, and when I peered through the windows, I could see that the building was empty. No furniture, no toys, no signs of recent activity. That's when I saw it, partially hidden behind an overgrown bush near the side entrance. Maya's diaper bag, the one with pink and purple flowers that my mother had bought for us. I grabbed it and unzipped every compartment, finding Maya's bottles, her extra clothes, her favorite stuffed elephant, everything I had packed that morning. But Maya wasn't there. I called 911 with trembling fingers. My daughter is missing. I dropped her off at daycare this morning and she's gone. I found her diaper bag, but she's not here. Please, I need help. Officer Bradley arrived within 10 minutes, a tall man with kind eyes who listened patiently as I explained the morning's events. He took detailed notes when I described Maya. 6 months old, wearing a yellow onesie with tiny elephants, dark hair, brown eyes, strawberry birthmark shaped like a heart on her left shoulder. "Ma'am, we're going to find your daughter," he said, radioing for backup and additional units. "But I need you to call someone to come be with you. This is going to be a long day, and you shouldn't be alone." I called my mother in California, sobbing into the phone. "Mom, something terrible has happened. Maya is missing, and I don't know where she is. I don't know what I did wrong." 3 days had passed since Maya disappeared, and I felt like I was drowning in a nightmare that wouldn't end. My mother, Rosa, had flown in from California within hours of my phone call, and my brother, David, had driven up from Colorado Springs to help coordinate the search efforts. The police had interviewed everyone at Sunny Days Childcare, but the building had been abandoned for months. The security cameras were broken, and no one could explain how Maya's diaper bag had ended up there. I hadn't slept more than 20 minutes at a time since Tuesday morning. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Maya's face, heard her little coos and giggles, felt the weight of her in my arms. The police had issued an Amber Alert, and Maya's photo was on every news station in Colorado. Hundreds of people were looking for her, but she had simply vanished. On Friday afternoon, I was sitting in the police station going over my statement for what felt like the 100th time when Detective Morrison asked me to verify Maya's physical description one more time for the database. 6 months old, 15 pounds, dark brown hair, brown eyes, I recited mechanically. She was wearing a yellow onesie with tiny gray elephants and white socks with lace trim. She has a small strawberry birthmark on her left shoulder that's shaped like a heart. That's when the glass doors of the police station opened, and a woman walked in, carrying a baby. Not just any baby, but a baby that made my heart stop completely. She had dark hair, she was wearing a yellow onesie with tiny elephants, and when she shifted in the woman's arms, I could see the distinctive heart-shaped birthmark on her left shoulder. "Maya!" I screamed, jumping up so fast that my chair fell backward. The woman holding the baby looked around frantically until her eyes met mine. She was about my age, with blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail and tears streaming down her face. She clutched the baby closer to her chest and walked directly toward me. "Excuse me," she said, her voice shaking. "I think there's been a terrible mistake. This is my daughter, Emma. Someone took her from my home this morning, and I've been looking everywhere for her." I stared at this stranger holding what I knew was my daughter, and every rational thought left my brain. That's my baby. That's Maya. Look at her birthmark. Look at her eyes. I've been looking for her for 3 days. The woman's face went white. "This is Emma Mitchell. I gave birth to her 6 months ago at Denver General Hospital. She was taken from her crib while I was in the shower this morning. I have photos, I have hospital records, I have everything that proves she's mine." Detective Morrison immediately stepped between us. "Ladies, I need both of you to stay calm. Ma'am," he said to the blonde woman, "what's your name?" "Sarah Mitchell. This is my daughter, Emma. She's 6 months old, and she was kidnapped from our home on Cherry Street this morning around 9:30 a.m. My legs felt like they were going to give out. "Detective, that's Maya. I know my own daughter. I've been caring for her every day since she was born." Sarah pulled out her phone with shaking hands and showed Detective Morrison dozens of photos. Baby pictures from the hospital, photos of her nursing the baby, family pictures with a man who must have been her husband. In every single image, the baby looked exactly like Maya, down to the heart-shaped birthmark and the way she held her little fists. "I don't understand what's happening here," Sarah said, looking back and forth between me and the detective. "But this is my baby. Emma was born on September 15th at Denver General Hospital. I have her birth certificate, her hospital bracelet, everything." "September 15th?" I whispered. "Maya was born on September 15th at Denver General Hospital." Detective Morrison called for backup and contacted the lab for emergency DNA testing. "Ladies, I need both of you to remain calm while we sort this out. We're going to take samples from both of you and the baby to determine parentage definitively." Sarah was crying now, holding the baby protectively. "I don't need a DNA test. This is my daughter. I know my own child." "So do I said, reaching toward Maya before Sarah stepped back. "I've been raising her for 6 months. I feed her every morning. I sing to her every night. I know exactly how she likes to be held. The baby looked back and forth between us with those familiar brown eyes, seemingly unbothered by the chaos around her. She made a little cooing sound that I had heard thousands of times, but when Sarah bounced her gently, she settled against her shoulder in a way that looked completely natural. Detective Morrison arranged for us to wait in separate rooms while the DNA samples were processed. The results will take approximately 72 hours, he explained. Until then, the child will remain in protective custody to ensure her safety. As they took Maya away from both of us, I felt like my heart was being ripped out of my chest. But looking at Sarah's face, I realized she was feeling exactly the same way. Something impossible was happening here, something that would challenge everything I thought I knew about motherhood and family and love. The call came on Monday morning at 8:15 a.m. Detective Morrison's voice was gentle but direct when he asked both families to come to the station immediately. "We have the DNA results, and we need to discuss them with everyone involved." I hadn't eaten or slept properly in 6 days. My mother, Rosa, held my hand in the back seat while my brother David drove us to the police station. In the car, I kept replaying every moment I had spent with Maya, every feeding, every diaper change, every time she had fallen asleep in my arms. She felt like mine in every way that mattered, but I was about to learn that biology doesn't always align with the heart. Sarah Mitchell was already there when we arrived, sitting with a tall man with kind eyes who I assumed was her husband Tom, and an older gentleman who looked like her father. She looked as exhausted and terrified as I felt. Detective Morrison led all of us into a conference room where the air felt thick with anticipation and dread. "The DNA results are conclusive," Detective Morrison began, looking directly at me. "Jessica, the baby you know as Maya is not your biological daughter. She belongs to Sarah and Tom Mitchell. Their daughter, Emma, was switched at birth with your biological child." The words hit me like a physical blow. Even though part of me had suspected this outcome, hearing it confirmed made my knees buckle. My mother caught my arm as I sank into the nearest chair. "Where is my daughter?" I whispered. "Where is my real baby?" Detective Morrison opened another file. "We've been investigating similar cases, and we believe your biological daughter is with the Martinez family on the other side of Denver. They have a 6-month-old girl they call Sophia, born on September 15th at Denver General Hospital. The preliminary DNA tests suggest she's your biological child." Sarah was crying now, reaching across the table toward me. "Jessica, I'm so sorry. I can't imagine what you're going through. Emma and we've been bonded since birth, but I know you love her too." "Maya," I corrected automatically. "Her name is Maya to me." "I know," Sarah said softly. "And Sophia is Maya to the Martinez family. This is going to destroy everyone." The next few hours were a blur of legal consultations, social worker meetings, and the most difficult phone calls I had ever made. The Martinez family, Carlos and Elena Martinez, were devastated when they learned that Sophia wasn't their biological daughter. Elena had been Sophia's primary caregiver for 6 months, just like I had been Maya's. Carlos broke down crying when he realized he would have to give up the little girl he had been calling his princess. But the most remarkable thing happened during those first meetings between all 3 families. Instead of anger or resentment, we found something unexpected: understanding. Elena Martinez looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "You love Maya the way I love Sophia. We're all mothers who had our children stolen from us by a mistake we never could have prevented." The hospital investigation revealed that a tired night nurse had accidentally switched our baby's identification bracelets during the chaos of a busy Labor and Day weekend. 2 babies born within hours of each other, both with dark hair and similar birth weights, had gone home with the wrong families. The hospital faced massive legal consequences, but that didn't undo 6 months of loving the wrong children. After weeks of family counseling and legal mediation, we made a decision that surprised everyone, including ourselves. Rather than forcing immediate custody exchanges that would traumatize 3 babies and 6 adults, we chose to create something unprecedented: a gradual transition that would honor the bonds we had already formed while helping the children connect with their biological families. Maya would stay primarily with Sarah and Tom, but I would remain part of her life as someone she would know and love. Sophia would come home with me, but Elena and Carlos would continue to be her family too. We arranged supervised visits, shared holidays, and a support system that acknowledged something revolutionary: that love doesn't end just because DNA results change everything. The first time I held Sophia, my biological daughter, I felt a connection I couldn't deny. She had my nose and my stubborn chin, and when she looked at me, I saw something familiar in her eyes. But she also reached for Elena Martinez when she cried and settled most easily in Carlos's arms when he sang to her in Spanish. 6 months later, our unusual extended family is thriving in ways none of us expected. Maya still lights up when she sees me, and Sophia has learned to trust me as her mother while maintaining her bond with the Martinez family. We celebrate birthdays together, share babysitting duties, and have created a support network that proves families can be built on love and choice, not just biology. People often ask me if I regret the mix-up, if I wish Maya had been my biological daughter. But I've learned that the most beautiful families are sometimes the ones that form in the most unexpected circumstances. Maya taught me to love unconditionally. Sophia is teaching me about resilience, and our combined families have shown me that sometimes the best love stories aren't about romance. They're about the courage to choose love even when everything you thought you knew about family gets turned upside down. If this story touched your heart or made you think differently about what it means to be a family, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Leave a comment below telling me about your own unconventional family story, because I know there are so many of you out there creating beautiful families in ways the world doesn't always understand or celebrate. And if you want to hear more stories about resilience, unexpected blessings, and the incredible ways that people find strength in impossible situations, make sure to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. I'll be back next week with another story that proves that sometimes the most beautiful endings come from the most challenging beginnings. Until then, hug your families a little tighter. Remember that love multiplies when it's shared, and never underestimate the power of choosing connection over conflict. Thank you for being part of our journey.